In this video, we are going from this to this to this. Stick around. It was early in the pandemic that I woke up one day and I saw a fallen tree in my backyard. Fortunately, the only damage it did was cutting my neighbor's cable and he couldn't watch YouTube for a couple of days. I had to remove that tree from my backyard, so I picked up the chainsaw and started cutting it down into smaller logs. I didn't know what kind of tree it was, I didn't like it to smell, and I really didn't think it was good wood. So, initially, my intention was to chop it up to make firewoods, but I decided to make few cookie slabs to see if I can do anything with them in the future. This is the third video of our 5 easy CNC projects. If you have missed the previous videos where we talked about contouring and pocketing techniques, you can find the links to those videos in the description below. After sitting in my shop for 2.5 years, this cookie is dry enough to be used for a project. So whenever you have a large stock that doesn't fit in your machine, you have to come up with other ideas to flatten it. One very popular idea to flatten slabs is using a router sled. I do not have a router sled, but I have a CNC machine. And if you really want to look at it, a CNC machine is just like a router sled. You have two parallel and equal rails of the same height that helps the sled to go back and forth. And then the sled helps the spindle go side to side. So we are going to use our CNC machine to flatten or surface our cookie slab. There are two ways of doing this, manually and automatically. We are going to surface both sides of the slab. We will do one side manually, meaning using a controller to control the movement of the spindle in the X, Y, Z directions. And after that, we will do the other side by creating a toolpath and letting the machine take care of the rest. When surfacing, it's better to use a flat or square end mill. We can use a standard 1/4 of an inch upcut end mill, but it will take a long time to complete the process since the cutting diameter is small. There are special surfacing end mills that can finish this job a lot faster and cleaner. I have two such end mills here. This one has a 1-inch cutting diameter and 3 cutters. It's very much like a rabbiting bit, but without the bearing guide. And this one has a 1.5-inch cutting diameter. And the cool thing about this end mill is that the carbide cutters can be replaced. You can rotate them whenever one side gets dull, and after using all 4 sides, you can just replace it with a new cutter. Both of these cutters are good options, and I will use them both in this project to compare their results. And I will leave the link for both of them in the description below. To hold the piece to the wasteboard, you cannot use anything that holds the stock from the top, because the end mill cuts the entire surface of the stock. You have to use some sort of side clamps or double-sided tape to hold the piece. To surface the stock manually, we need to find the highest spot of the stock, and we need to go 1/10 of an inch below that and start surfacing by going over the stock with the spindle on. When there are no more spots to be touched by the cutter, go down another 1/10 of an inch and go over the stock again. Repeat these steps until the whole top side of the stock is flattened. To surface the stock automatically, we need a toolpath. Surfacing is basically a special pocketing, with the pocket size being as big as the stock itself. Since most cookie slabs are not perfect circles, I figured that the best way to go about this is to find the width and height of a rectangle that can cover the whole area of the stock and add 1 inch to them. So in our case, if the stock can fit in a 19 by 21 inch rectangle, I am going to draw a 20 by 22 inch rectangle. This way I can make sure that it's going to cover everything. For the toolpath, first we need to introduce our cutter to Carbide Create. I suggest you use the manufacturer's suggestion for any specific cutter. For depth per pass, I would not go any deeper than 1/10 of an inch. Also, you need to figure out how deep you want to go. You don't want to spend lots of time to figure out your final depth. I say just make a good guess, and if you need, you can just run your code for another pass or two. Next thing we need to do is to zero out our axes. Normally I use the combination of bit 0 and bit setter to zero the XYZ, but since the surface of my stock is not flat and the bit is too big, we need to zero out our axes manually. For X and Y axes, we need to find the center of the stock. Usually I set the toolpath 0 point to the left corner, but in this case I think the center would be better. And for Z-axis, again, we need to find the highest spot of the stock and make that our Z-axis 0. And this time I hooked up the dust collection because it made a huge mess when I was doing it manually. We are done with our surfacing. Both sides are flattened and parallel to each other. And I think doing it automatically with the bigger cutter left a much better surface. Initially, as you can see in the footage, I just wanted to sand it to remove the tool marks and make it ready for a finish. But I decided to fill the cracks as much as I can with epoxy. I cleaned up some of the cracks using a 22-degree V-bit, so it would be easier to pour the epoxy. I taped the other side of the slab to make sure there would be no leakage. When the epoxy is cured, I remove the tape and I ran my toolpath for a shallow depth to remove all excess epoxy. And I ran it through the drum sander to remove the tool marks. I sanded down with 80 and 120 grit sandpaper, which is the highest grit recommended for the finish that I'm going to use for this project. Before applying the finish, I just lightly spray it with water to raise the grain, and again I sanded it smooth with 120 grit. I use both tack cloth and mineral spirit to completely clean the slab from any sawdust. For finish, I am going to use Rubio Monocoat Hard Wax, which is a very easy finish to apply, and it keeps the natural look of the wood. With this finish, you just mix the wax and the accelerator to the correct ratio and apply it with the silicone spreader or a non-scratch scuff pad. To be honest, I really didn't think this would turn out to be this beautiful, and I still don't know what kind of hardwood it is. My best guess is L, but if anyone knows the species, please leave it out in the comments. And after a few minutes, I come back and remove any excess with a rag. Also, it is a good idea to buff it out by hand or with an electric buffer. I had these metal legs laying in the shop for a while, and I think now it's a good time to use them. I mark and drill some pilot holes, and it's a good idea to use some wax to drive the screws easier into the hardwood. And we are done. I really hope you enjoyed this build, and I will see you in the next one.